Hi, this is Jan Gray, and I hope you're having a terrific day. Today I get to introduce you to watercolor stamping. I've been looking forward to this because I love working with these Art Impression watercolor stamps. They allow those of us that are watercolor challenged to create really beautiful watercolor paintings, and you can use them on a variety of projects. But today I wanted to just teach you the basics and introduce you to the products that you're going to need. Once you understand how these products work together, you're going to be able to create all sorts of unique watercolor paintings yourself. So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about what you need. You're going to begin with, you're going to obviously want some of the Art Impression watercolor stamps, and then you're also going to want some dye-based markers. Now I prefer the Marvy Le Plume markers. Those are what Bonnie Krebs, who is the creator of watercolor stamping, uses, but I hear that you can also use Tombow or even distress markers. The key to all of this is really understanding how to work with each of the various stamps. So I'm going to introduce those to you one at a time. There's only about 2 or 3 things that you need to keep in mind. If you are working with a bunch of flowers, like several of the little flower heads all in a group, what you want to do is ink up your stamp and then stamp it about 5 times in a circular manner. And what you end up with is something that has some areas of dark and some areas of light, like you actually would in nature. So to activate the ink, you're going to dip your brush in water and pinch off the brush, and then come in and just dab each of these to activate the ink. Now this is what ends up making it look more like a watercolor painting than a stamp. I'm going to come in here really close and show that to you again, but you can see just by stamping it multiple times and then activating it with the water, you end up with this really lovely watercolor look. It does not look like stamping. So here I've done that again, and you can see I've got some that are dark, some that are light, just like you would see it in nature. I'm pinching off my brush, meaning I'm taking most of the water out of it, and I'm not really painting. I'm just touching each of those little areas to put a little bit of water onto it and activate the ink. Now, for a bunch of flowers where there is a stem with a flower attached, I go ahead and I'm going to use 2 colors of ink. I'm going to use a green for the stems. You'll notice I'm using the side of my brush on these, and then I'm just going to go in and touch my floral color to the tops. And on these, I want to put 2 side by side and then kind of rock it up, so I'm just using the floral part of that stamp and add that 3rd little bunch up there. And what that does is that gives you really nice coverage. And again, we're getting that variation of color where we've got some that are dark, some that are lighter. And that really gives you that in nature watercolor look. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to do 2 side by side. And then I'm going to rock it up and fill in a few more of those little flowers up on top. And to activate it and get that nice watercolor look, I'm going to put some water on my brush, pinch it off. Really important that you do that. If your brush has too much water on it, you're going to just kind of get a muddy mess. What we want is to just activate the ink without totally disintegrating the detail that was there in the stamp. So see, we've got the best of both worlds with this. Bonnie Krebs, who is the creator of watercolor stamping, she's the creator of Art Impressions, and I just love that she has figured out how to take all these little teeny tiny images and let us create our own unique paintings with them. She took the scariness out of watercolor. I love that look of soft watercolor, but it takes years really to perfect the art of watercolor painting, but she has found a way with these wonderful little stamps just to let us put them together in our own way. You noticed I just took my brush when I was done and kind of let it go right along the bottom of that bunch, giving it a place to land. Now, the third kind of floral stamp that Bonnie has created are these long stems, and to do those we're going to use two colors again. I'm going to do the stem in the green, and then I'm going to do the flowers in another color, and you basically want to do these just a couple of times. And I'm going to go up for the third one, and usually I'm putting these into a pot or an arrangement of some sort. If I were doing these directly onto something where it was on the ground, I would probably try to keep them a little more on the same level, but I like this grouping that you get, and our eyes like groupings of three, and so that's why kind of doing that in a group of three just makes a really nice little arrangement. So let me show you that one more time. I know that sometimes it's easier to learn by somebody doing rather than telling you what it is to do. So I'm going to do one, angle it, and then bring a third one up to form a little grouping. And you'll notice I'm not making a blob out of these. Each time I pinch my brush off, and I do not add water to the stems. We'll just leave those alone. Now let's move on to foliage. Foliage is in just about every single one of these little paintings, and each of the sets, you know, I'm going to show you some projects here in a bit, but you can really, once you know how to use these various types of stamps, you can pick out the ones that you want and use them. Once you kind of know the rules, you can apply them to any of the stamps. So you see I've done that about 4 or 5 times, just kind of varying the direction. And again, I'm going back in and just activating the leaves just a little bit. I'm not painting the stems. I'm just activating the ink that's there, have a darker area and a lighter area, and because the water softens the edges of the leaves, you get that nice watercolor look. Let me show you that one more time. I'm going to stamp and then kind of turn it and lift it up. If you're wanting to make a vine, you kind of travel up with it. If you're wanting to make a bush, you kind of fan it out. All of these basic little stems and vines you use in the exact same way. So even if you don't end up with the same exact stamps that I'm using, you can use the same technique and use what you have. And I love that about these stamps. This is a really key technique. Grass is another really staple. I use it in just about every little painting, and I'm using the teeny tiny grass here from the original foliage set. And grass, you want to travel in a line. We don't bunch it up. We want to kind of, because grass is growing on that horizontal dirt, we want to kind of give that same sense. And again, I'm taking my dampened brush that I pinched off, and I'm pulling out a few of those grasses stems and then giving it a little place to land. So let's do that one more time. I'm going to ink up the stamp with the side of my brush, and I'm just going to travel along in a line. And again, we get that variation of light and dark. The water activates the ink and gives us that really nice watercolor look. Now let's say you want to go down a hill. You can certainly do that as well. So you have the freedom, as long as you're kind of moving in that in a straight line. So now let's work on a container. And these are the two basic colors, sepia and African violet. The sepia is a nice earthy color to it, and I start out with it for all of my basic shapes, no matter what I'm going to do, even if I'm going to add color to them, and I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. So I'm going to stamp this on my watercolor paper. And then this is how we start out every time. We dip our brush in the water, pinch it off, and then we don't want to color across the lines. We're going to pull ink out of the lines and pull them into the areas of it. But because this container is round, we want to leave that center have a little highlight, and that's how our eyes know that it is a rounded container. So it's going to be darker on the sides. So you'll see I'm pulling that color in from the sides, but always leaving the sides darker than I have it in the middle. And if I want to add a little color to this, now that I've kind of gotten that earthy sepia color on there, I'm going to put just a little bit. I believe this is steel blue, but really any color that you want to do. And we're going to start by adding it to the sides and pulling it over. And what makes it not look flat is that we have the sides that are much darker, and we don't really paint it all in. If you were to just take this color and paint it in all solid one color, then it will it'll look flat. So even if you don't have color on every single inch of this little container, it actually is going to look more real if you leave some areas with a little highlight and where the color isn't solid. Areas of light and dark. Contrast is what lets our eyes know that we are looking at something round and not flat. So the other color is the African violet, and it's really kind of a dark blue more than a violet, but it's a cool color. And so let's say that we wanted this container to be a white container or a really light colored container. Well, then I would go with the African violet as my base color instead of the sepia. And I want you to see how just the difference between these two colors can really make a huge difference. So I'm going to do exactly what I did on the other one. I'm going to begin to pull color out of the lines, but I'm going to again leave that highlight in the center. I'm going to give a little bit of that shadow underneath that lip to show that that lip is a little bit further out than the bottom part of the container. And then I'm going to pull that color into the center, leaving that highlight to let the viewer know that that container is round. Then I'm going to pull just a little bit of a shadow out, and that grounds it on there. But you can see, just using the two different colors of ink, we get a really different look. Now let's just go ahead and finish this little container off, because I know that you're anxious to see what it looks like to put it all together. So I'm just going to put a little sticky note down right on the edge of that container, and then I'm going to take our little bunch of flowers and I'm going to use my green, I believe that is olive green, and then I believe that's aubergine that I am using. I'm going to color the tops of our little floral bunch, and I'm using the sticky note to keep it from going over the edges of the container, but I do my side by side and little bunch to fill in the top. And you can see just that easily with just a couple of little stamps, you have such a cute little watercolor. And these basic techniques that I've shown you are how you use all of the stamps. What makes them unique is how you put them together. Once you kind of know the rules, you'll be able to put a project together in no time. And I wanted you to just have this basic overview of the various types of stamps and how to use them, because you can put little scenes like this together, and I'll be sharing more with you soon. But this is your introduction to watercolor stamping. I hope you'll join me again soon for another video for Illuminated Journaling. Bye.